Hello everybody, it's your expert gamer Mystic Games coming at you with a Against the Storm video. Um, Welcome back guys, I appreciate you all being here. Today we're going to talk buildings. You would know that because it's going to be on the title, so that's why we're here. I'm going to be doing a building rating video, so if you're interested in my thoughts on what I think the best buildings are for the game for your success, I will give you my personal thoughts and opinions. We're going to go right down the list. I'm going to skip things like the Ancient Tombstone, which is a decoration piece. These are, like this building, this is aesthetics. Barrels is comfort. Those are the things that you need to upgrade your hearth. Obviously, you probably know that if you're watching this video, you're looking for ways to increase your success rate. So I don't have all the buildings unlocked. I'm pretty leveled up at this point. I have a very good understanding of the game, and I competently generally will win. So I feel pretty competent giving this list. So we're going to start with the Advanced Rain Collector. I'm not a big fan of this at all, to be honest. Like, this is a building I would take if I had foxes and I really had no other options. I think the trader might sell this. That would be probably the only place I would get this. If I had extra gold. The Alchemist's Hut is pretty good. This is a very foxy building. If you have fox species with the fox, this is a good building. I'm not going to give ratings out of 4, 5, because that's just kind of what I was doing with cornerstones, and then I was thinking about that, and I kind of mentioned it in the video. It really matters, like, what your species are, like, that you're getting. So if you have, beavers, this building wouldn't be as good as it would be for, like, foxes. This is a very good fox building, and it does have, like, wine, which is a luxury item, which is good for beavers, but it isn't what I per se would say is good for beavers. This is a really fox-focused building, in my opinion. I think crystallized dew in general is a fox item. Apothecary. I'm not a big fan of this building, no matter what you have. But again, this is a fox and harpy building. It has biscuits, which is good. The issue is only the harpies would want the biscuits. So that's kind of weird. So if you had foxes, this wouldn't be as valuable. Archaeologist, that's a special building. Artisan's a pretty good building. And the reason I like the Artisan, and I'm not saying this is a game-winning building, this is not like an auto-choose, but if I need coats and I have harpies, this isn't a bad option, just for the resolve bonus. Barrels are not horrible to make. They take crystallized dew and copper bars. Those are the two choices there. And then you have packs. I'm just showing you guys like what you need. Pack of luxury goods is pretty good as well. It's just it's worthwhile for my God, orders and just extra money sometimes from the trader. Now the bakery is a lizard building bonus, but this is such a good building, man. There's so many people that like biscuits. You have like beavers, humans, and harpies, I want to say, are the 3 that like biscuits. Also, lizards like pies, so they get a bonus here, and they like pies. So even if you don't have all 3 of those races that like biscuits, and you have lizards for one of them, you're at least getting pies for them, and then you're still feeding the other 2 the biscuits. And I believe harpies and humans like pies as well. So if you get harpies, lizards, and humans, this is an extremely solid building. So that one I will give. I will give a number to this one, simply because I believe this building is a 5. Very few times that I see this building and it doesn't work with the comp I have. The bathhouse, this is a luxury building. I am not a big fan of like specialty luxury buildings, the late game stuff that you're supposed to put in. Normally I try to get certain buildings. The bathhouse isn't one of them. So it also only gives you one thing for resolve, which is T. Beanery is, again, it's a fox building. It's porridge, so it's solid with humans as well. They like porridge. So if you have humans and foxes and you want, the best quality porridge, this is a 3-star building and it is good. I'm not going to go over houses. You really should be trying to build the houses that each species belongs to. That should be your focus in your game. And if you're not doing that, you're losing out on a lot of resolve, and that's all I'm going to say. So once you unlock building-specific housing, and it's not like a blueprint choice for you, that's really solid. Big shelters are a better version of the shelter, and I'd always recommend generally building these instead of just standard shelters once you gain access to them. The Blight Post, if you're playing on harder difficulties, it is not a must. I'm not going to say it's a must because that's not true. If you avoid using rainwater in buildings, you will not get corruption and you will not need a Blight Post. That being said, when you go into the higher level areas and stuff, and if you just get bad rolls, and like when you're opening blades and you get a lot of like geysers, you might just end up using rainwater just to keep yourself alive, and therefore you will need a Blight Post. So Blight Post is a very situational building. If you are using rainwater, you need the Blight Post. If you're not using rainwater, you don't need it, essentially. Brewery, again, this is not... I don't really like the brewery. This is very specific to, I want to say, beavers and humans. I think like ale. I believe that is it. I don't think harpies do. Foxes may, but I don't think they do. Again, depends on your comp. So if you have beavers and humans, this could be a good building. I'm not a big fan of this one. This is not like an auto choose. Brick oven, on the other hand, pies are liked by quite a few people. Harpies, lizards, and humans like pies. This gives you a good pie ratio per, your materials used, and it increases the speed because it's a 3-star building. So if you have a lot of species that require pies to get their resolve up, this is a good building. I will say that sometimes I will take the brick oven and I will take the bakery if there's no better choice with, like, if I already have... A lot of times I try to get the bakery first if I have the option, but if I see the brick oven come up later, I will generally choose it simply to get the better pie production. If I have enough people that need pie, and I'll make my bakery essentially a pure biscuit production building. But I think it's a really good building. I do want to point out, underneath the building cost, like where the bricks are right here, I'm putting my cursor over. You guys can't see it because I have it deleted, but you can see that the thing came up. The portrait of a person ×3, that's how many people can work in the building, and that is important as well. If you go back to the bakery, which I'll just show you for an example, that only carries 2. That is the biggest weakness of the bakery, in my opinion, is you can only have 2 workers. Brickyard is the best building for making bricks. Therefore, it is a very good building. If you have foxes, it's an even better building, and it gives you access to pottery, which is pretty good, at a 2-star rating. And as I said, I'm not a big fan of crystallized dew, but if you have foxes, this is a good way to get access to it without having to worry about sacrificing anything, because I think the 3-star bricks are worth it. I do like the brickyard. Butcher is very good for lizards, harpies, and foxes. So I will say, if you have those 3 species, the butcher is extremely good. The carpenter is a very well balanced building. This is a good building. If I do not have access to a planks building, like the lumber mill, I will take the carpenter. Although I do prefer the lumber mill because eventually I generally get the speed up fast enough, and then once I get enough people I can just throw 2 people in the lumber mill and it is more efficient. So I normally will say, unless you're planning on doing tools in your run, this one is not as good as the lumber mill, but is a good replacement if you're not getting the lumber mill in your random rolls. The cellar is very good if you need wine production. It's a very small footprint building as well, which is important. And again, it's very situational, but if you need wine and you need a small footprint, this is a good building. Clan Hall has both brawling and religion there, and gives camp production higher. So if you're in the mushroom map and you're trying to generally focus on camps instead of fertile soil, this is a very good building. I would argue that it's not as good if you are not if you're in any map that has a good amount of fertile soil. This makes it less good. I don't use any of the buildings that take up fertile soil, that are the clay pit, and I'll get, when I get to the other one, I'll show you guys, but I don't really recommend the clay pit, simply put. I do like the clothier. Now, cost per ratio of what you're getting out of the clothier is not very good, but it does make very fast coats, and coats take a long time to make, even at 3 stars, and even with the production reduction that you will be getting over time. If you have harpies and you have access to a good amount of fabric and you're able to produce it, this is a great way to get resolve up for harpies and humans and beavers. These are all like special buildings. Cookhouse. The cookhouse is another good option. Again, it depends. This is, well, most buildings, I'll just reiterate this a lot, but the species do matter. So this is good for lizards because of the skewers, foxes because of the skewers, biscuits for harpies, beavers, and humans. So this is a very good all-around building, and pigment is okay. Pigment, it's like a filler to me. This is the one thing I'm not a big fan of in the game. Pigment feels like almost a filler that you need to use to make other specialized goods that you need to use in buildings like the clan hall. And I'm not saying in particular, I'm just saying that type of building where villagers can fulfill their needs kind of buildings. We're going to move on to the cooperage. I'm not a big fan of the cooperage at all. I don't really see the use of it, even if you have the races or species that specialize in it. Not a big fan of it. Crude workstation is good if you're missing one of the 3 goods for buildings, which is planks, fabric, and bricks. But if you have access to any of these buildings, what I recommend is you turn off. If I have lumber mill, I will turn off planks and I'll leave fabric and bricks on. I normally turn off pipes until I actually need pipes. And then just use that for whatever ones I don't have a specialized building in. Distillery. Okay, so this has wine and porridge, which if I have the species that require porridge, I do like this building, because generally somebody will want wine. And it's just like a bonus to have access to it. Druid's Hut. Druid's Hut's alright. If you have harpies, it's good. And if you have access to a good amount of plant fibers, that's what I'd recommend using. Or grain. Grain and plant fibers are generally pretty good to use for this. Explorer's Lodge. I'm not a big fan of this one. The bonus is not very good. I'm reading it right now because I literally didn't know what it did because I do not use this one very often. This would be really good if you get the Ruins modifier and you're playing on that map, because you're probably going to get a lot of rebuilt or salvaged ruins done, which would make this beneficial, but that would be the only map I can even contest that this is a good idea. Farm field is need for farms. This is super good And if you have fertile soil, you should be using this. It's not technically a building, I'm just saying that in general. Field buildings like plantation and all that are very good. We'll get to that later. Field kitchen. It's like your basic, if you need to fulfill a good, you unlock this building for free. You won't need the blueprint. It's just you're going to have high costs for these 4 food sources. I generally would recommend that you try to specialize your food sources when you can. I don't want to say as fast as possible because you need other buildings to support your food, but once you have those buildings in place, you don't really want to use the field kitchen. Finesmith. This makes amber and tools. If you can make amber, it's a pretty solid building. I don't know if you can find... I think this is only found in the world. I don't think this comes up as a blueprint, but I could be wrong. But it is, obviously, if you can make amber, that's good. Making money is great. Flawless Brewery is just a better brewery. All of the flawless buildings are better versions that you can find that are really good. Out of all of them, I would say the Rain Mill would be extremely helpful. Actually, the Rain Mill, well, I don't think any of these are really that great, the flawless ones, but I'd probably say actually the Leather Worker for a flawless building is probably the best one. The Smelter's probably not bad either. For the camps, the Forager's Camp, again, if you have access to the human species and you are finding a lot of things that the Forager's Camp is good at, it reduces the speed of collections. So you'll have access to a small Forager's Camp, a small Trapper's Camp, and a small camp that I can't think of the name of. That's the purple one right now. And when you upgrade them to the higher version, you do get a faster collection rate, which is important to know. Humans work better in the Forager's Camp. So if you're finding a lot of grain, roots, vegetables, this, is a good building. Forester's Hut. Okay, so this is what I would call a extra building if I have a lot of access to a lot of fertile soil and I do not need it all for food sources, and I have, generally if I have beavers and or foxes, I will take this building just to have access to crystallized dew, but there are better ways to get it. It also takes like a minute compared to the 30 seconds that resin and all the other food takes. Forum. The Forum is a really good building because it has the 15% increase to the double yields. It does leisure and education as well, which I think are pretty good. I think education, that tends to require pigment or other things to make so that you can make the scroll. I feel like that's kind of harder to fulfill than ale is. Again, I'm just clicking on it. Fox House. If you can build it, you should be building that if you have foxes. Furnace. So this one, it has a lot of good stuff in it. Everything is tier 2. Tier 2 is okay. I always try to get tier 3 if I can, if I need a specific item. If you have access to copper bars, it's good. If you do not have a better version of bricks, it is good. If you need pie, it is good. If you need 2 of these items and you do not have access to them, take this building. It's good enough where it will help you. Geyser pumps we'll talk about real quick. They are good, but once you're off the level, I want to say it's Veteran and then Viceroy, if I'm thinking about the order of them right, and then Settler and then Pioneer. If you're on Settler or Pioneer, you can use all the water you want in your buildings, and it doesn't matter. So always use geyser pumps and always connect them to your buildings. If you're on harder difficulties, it's really going to vary on if you want to deal with the blight rot and if it's beneficial enough to deal with the blight rot to use water. But you can always use a geyser pump to gain water and then not use it within a building directly. So when you make porridge, for example, you need water. A geyser pump is great for collecting the water you need for porridge. And when you do that, you will not gain blight rot because you are not using the water directly in the building production tab. You're only using it indirectly to make porridge. So that's something good to know, because you wouldn't know that until you try it. And you might not want to try it because you don't want to risk getting blight rot and ruining your run. So just for everyone to know, geyser pumps can still be useful even if you're trying to avoid blight rot, because if you need porridge, this will help you get some of the rain that you need without sacrificing a person. Granary is literally one of my favorite buildings. So it has pickled goods, so if you're running beavers, lizards, or foxes, this is a really good building. It also has access to fabric, which is really good. And packed crops are extremely useful for selling, and they're extremely useful for a lot of orders. So I really like this building. This is one of the few buildings where I would say even if you don't have humans, it's a good building. Like, the person that is actually specializing in it doesn't really benefit from the pickled goods, nor do they really benefit from fabric other than clothing. I just find it very interesting because this building is good because humans do a better job, but it is not really for them. It's for beavers, I would say foxes, and lizards. Greenhouse. Not a big fan of the greenhouse. That's all I'm really going to talk about. I like the other fertile soil buildings better. Grill has better skewers. So if you have, I want to say it's foxes and lizards eat skewers. If you have both those species, great building. Lizards also gain a bonus working there, so that's just a bonus. The guild house, if I remember, is extremely good. Yep, traders arrive quicker with just one person. And then one global resolve every time you get 75 amber. Sell it, I believe. Yeah. Super good. Super good building. We're going to do the regular herb garden, but the hollowed herb garden essentially gives you 3-star, 3-star, which is if you find one of these, you have to like cure it. Same with the hollowed small farm. You have to cure it. Super good. It also gets 3 people at it instead of 2, which makes it even better. Harpy house. If you have harpies, build the harpy house. Harvester's camp. This is an upgraded camp, not a small camp, that you use to collect plant fibers and reeds. Both this camp and the stonecutter's camp, and I'm going to talk about it later when I do click on it, are both very good buildings. Normally I will build 3 camps. Well, I shouldn't say 3 camps. I build 4 camps generally, and I try not to build any more than 4. So I'll explain that right now simply so everyone knows. So if I have the starting stuff, I'm just going to show you guys my map actually right here. So for example, I have mushrooms to start. So I built the small herbalist camp. I built 2 woodcutters camps, and I'm building a stonecutter's camp, I should say. So those are the camps I'm building to start the game with, because the hope is that I won't need to build any different camps for the other goods, which would be, oh my god, the trapper's camp and the forager's camp, because I'm hoping that generally I like to find fertile soil, and then I rely on plantations or another building to give me food that way. And these are just like backups. So anyways, back to here. But the harvester camp is kind of a free one. I do recommend just having it, even if you push it to the side for a minute. You can always just come back and grab it later. So here's our first fertile soil farm building. Herb garden used to be one of my favorites. I actually now don't value it as high as I value the plantation. I will say the herb garden is very good, but I believe the plantation is better. There are stipulations to why I believe that is, though, and it requires certain cornerstones, but if you get the right cornerstones, I feel like the plantation is stronger than the herb garden. Without any cornerstones, right, and those are randoms, it's a lot of RNG there, I would argue the herb garden is better than plantation, but I will explain the cornerstone. I'll show you guys the cornerstone right now, so everyone knows, because this is a good combo if you ever roll this. This like, I win a lot of games if I get this and I have fertile soil. If you get mushroom seedlings, it gives all farms can plant mushrooms. If you get that, even if you have the herb garden and you don't have the plantation, that's really good. Because you can essentially cancel out roots and just replace it with mushrooms and herbs, and that will cover most of your needs. There are only a few buildings that require roots instead of mushrooms. And if you also get a few patches of fertile soil, like we'll just say you get 3, you can essentially just make one of them grow roots with even herbs and mushrooms still, and then just use the other 2 just for herbs and mushrooms, we'll say. And you'll generally produce enough roots to recover whatever you need, because the mushrooms will cover mostly everything else along with the herbs. So, what I'm saying is this is a good building by itself, but if you get the mushroom seedlings, these are extremely insane with mushroom seedlings. Is what I'm going to be getting at. Herbalist camp. It's good if you have any of these needs: herbs, berries, or mushrooms, and you have harpies. The Holy Market. Is this a new building? Holy Temple. So it essentially does... Interesting. These must be special buildings. I can't even remember seeing them, to be honest. The Homestead is a special building that you find in Glades. If you find this, you're going to find a bunch of fertile soil, and it's generally very good. Unless you have certain cornerstones, again, on your herb garden or plantation or small farm, this will generally beat them all. Human houses, build human houses if you have humans. Kiln. If you need coal, very good. I'm not a big fan of the kiln, to be honest, but it is not a bad building. Again, it's a very situational building, though. Leatherworker, if you need a higher tier of fabric, is a good building. I have a hard time making water skins generally, unless I have some sort of access to leather, and most times I feel like I don't. So I'm not a big fan of water skins, although I know they are a good resource. I just have a hard time collecting the things needed to produce them myself. I generally buy them, honestly. Lizards houses, make them if you have lizards. Lumber mill, the best production on planks. If you have beavers in particular, this is even better. But I will say, lumber mill, good building. Use it. Manufactory, if you need packed provisions, good. If you need training gear, good. It is very weird that it is a harpy building, because generally if you're making training gear, you are having lizards and foxes. So this is a very weird building, and I tend not to use it. But again, if you have harpies, lizards, and foxes, there's synergy there with this building. And again, I hope you guys don't mind that I'm not giving you a direct rating on the building by itself, because a lot of buildings really matter on your species combinations, and I think it's unfair to make a rating based on a building completely, unless the building's just, in my opinion, broken. The market is extremely strong because of the global carrying weight, and this is a good building in a general sense if you have 2 extra people to throw in here for carry weight. That's without needing luxury and treatment. So this is just a really strong building in general, but it's even better if you have the species required for it. So going back to my prior statement, like the manufactory, this one requires a certain build to be acceptable, whereas I would say the market's always a good choice if you need a building to fulfill needs. The monastery is okay. It decreases hostility by 100. So it's just like a solid decrease. It's an alright building. Again, if you need religion or leisure, it makes it better. But the bonus just isn't that great, and it requires 3 people. Plantation. Plantation is my #1 fertile soil building. If I get mushroom seedlings, cornerstone, it is probably one of the best buildings because it pretty much covers all the food source I need. and it covers the production of cloth or fabric. So I would argue, and it has a 2-2. So if I get large baskets, which is a cornerstone I talked about in a video, which essentially just doubles the production on this, it makes it 9 berries, 9 plant fiber instead of 6. And then if you can roll mushroom seedlings earlier in the game, like maybe the 2nd year or the 4th year, this building is extremely strong at that point. Just so everybody knows, it's one of my favorite buildings, especially if you get mushroom seedlings. It essentially will cover almost all your needs. The press is really good if you need to produce oil. I actually like this more than, I want to say it was the Druid's hut up top, and I believe I am correct there, for a building because it has flour on it, and even though it's only a 1-star, at least it gives you access to flour, which is generally useful. Packed luxury goods are okay. Provisioner, again, this is one of my favorite buildings if I need flour, I will say, because it's a 2-star flour and it has access to packed provisions and barrels. And barrels can be okay in certain situations, and packed provisions are always good, and flour is generally always good. Rain collector. This is one's important to talk about. So if you have foxes and you need rain and you don't have access to geysers, rain collectors are good. If you're playing on harder difficulties where you have blight rot and you are using rain collectors, I feel like personally it is a waste of manpower. But on lower difficulties, it's fine. I just wouldn't recommend it. I don't think it's worth the usage. Now, if you're building one just to increase your tank capacity, that's okay. Rain Mill has the 3-star flour, which means you get the lowest amount of goods used. Roots, mushrooms working here along with grain. And you get pack of building goods, and you get scrolls, which is good. These are both nice little bonuses to have. But the big thing here is you make really fast flour production, which is very helpful. Okay, so this is a special building that you find along like the other one with that you can produce amber. It makes gears. Gears are really good to be able to produce, and if you have the ability to produce them, like you have a lot of any of these 4 resources here, and any of these resources, this is awesome. Also, you have access to making wildfire essence, which is awesome. These are good for selling, or these are really good for trading too. You can usually get a very good trade deals, anywhere from like 5 to 8 gold for one of them and 1 pack provision. And if you get that early on, you sell like 3 of them, that gives you a lot of gold to play with right in the beginning of the game. So if you find this building in the wilderness, it is a good building. This is not something you just get. So I want to make sure everyone understands this is you bust open a glade and you find this kind of building. The ranch is okay. The ranch for me is if I need meat, and if I need leather. The issue is generally I don't need either of those resources bad enough where I would pick the ranch. There are very few games where I feel the ranch is useful. So really only pick this if you need meat and then you need leather, and you'll know as you play through if that's something that you're requiring. The scribe is, I just don't think the focus on scrolls is good enough. And if you're trying to make ale, just make the brewery. Even though I feel like the brewery is not a great building, but I feel like it's better than the scribe. Your basic shelter, if you don't have access to the other shelters, it's fine. I wouldn't use it once you get better shelters. Small farm. I think this is the weakest of the fertile soil buildings. Someone can argue with me because I'm sure there's someone that loves the small farm. But this is the weakest one in my opinion. You can get a lot of grain bonuses, I will say that, but grain is so... You need to turn it into something to make it useful other than in porridge. And because of that, I don't find it useful enough to pick the small farm over the plantation or over the herb garden. We have the small foragers, small herbalists, small trappers. I will tell you guys, out of these 3 buildings in a general sense, whether it be the large version or the small versions, I like the trap. I think the Trapper's Camp is generally the most valuable one out of the 3. And then I would say it's the Herbalist Camp, and then I would say it's the Forager's Camp. I'm a big fan of being able to collect meat, insects, and eggs. And normally if I am going to upgrade a camp, unless I just got a bunch of bad, well, I want to say bad glades, but just no meat or insects or eggs, I will generally upgrade the Trapper's Camp over the other ones. We are going to talk about the small warehouse. If you're building a lot of fertile soil and you're playing around, you know, foods coming from your farms mostly, and your camps, if you're even using them, are more of a bonus, you should be spending these resources on almost every fertile soil location. So you want to be building these next to every plantation, every small farm, and every herb garden you can. It's very good to do so. It makes the travel time a lot lower. It's going to help you. Alright, smelter. The smelter is very good if you have lizards and if you have foxes. It gives you copper and it gives you training gear, which is good for both of them for their needs. Smithy. Smithy is good if you need any of these. Arguably, I feel like copper bars are harder to make than crystallized dew most of the time, but if you have access to crystallized dew, this is a totally acceptable building to make. If you're using copper bars, I feel like one of the big issues with the mine in this game is it requires people and time to get the ore to then turn into copper bars to then use in another building, and I feel like that makes it extremely inefficient, and none of the stuff that you're making gives you needs. Like, it doesn't really solve your people's needs, so you're spending a lot of time to produce a bar. You're collecting this, and then you're using someone else to smelt it, and then you're using this to make these. Okay, so that's 3 steps you're making. Unless you absolutely need tools and you absolutely need pipes and you can't afford to buy them, you're just spending a lot of time. That's all I'm going to say. I tend to focus on my resolve and my needs more than I do this stuff. It would actually be cool, on a side note, if the developer did give some sort of need bonus or a resolve bonus, not in a cornerstone, but when you open up a abandoned cache or something, and you use tools and stuff like that, not just a reputation bonus. Anyways, I would think that would make it more valuable to actually spend the time to do all that. Smokehouse is the best way to make jerky. If you have a harpy, lizards, I think that's it. If you have harpies and lizards, especially if you have both, good building. And then you throw your lizards in here, they get happy for just being in here, and you make them pump out jerky. And they're even happier because then they eat jerky. Win-win. Stamping mill is a good building if you need pottery and if you need flour. Again, I'm not a fan of making copper bars. But this isn't a horrible building. I generally don't pick it because I feel like there's better options for pottery and for flour. I don't value the 3-star pottery is what I'm saying, I guess. Stonecutter's Camp is a great camp to have. Stone and clay are very useful, so is Seamarrow, but you'll generally have a lot of stone or clay. And you want whatever one you have. I actually value, just so everyone knows, I will say stone is generally, in my opinion, more valuable than clay is. Because you can use it to open glades and stuff like that. Or not open glades, break down caches and do a lot of events in glades. Whereas clay is more used for, like, pottery, and I think it has some other use in production, but other than that, it's not really helpful. You can also use stone to make roads. So stone is the MVP. They need to probably do something with clay to make it a little better when they update the game. Supplier is good if you need planks. It has flour access, which is great, and water skins are good. It's just, as I said, I have a hard time making them. The tavern gives you a +3 to resolve. If you need resolve, you have beavers, harpies, and humans, I believe, like luxury. The foxes may like luxury as well. This is not a bad building, and the bonus isn't horrible. So it is one of the better need-fulfilling buildings. The Tea Doctor, I don't think is good. Well, in a longer game, Vitality is good. I've never used this building before, to be honest. It would be good for Foxes, though. They do like both treatment, I believe, and brawling. So, for them, it works. Lizards would like the brawling, and Harpies like the treatment. I believe that is correct, without looking at the species list. Tea House has good tea, good porridge, and then has access to water skins. If you need porridge, 2-star porridge isn't horrible, and you get the bonus of having access to tea. Temple is one of the best, in my opinion, is one of the best fulfilling needs buildings as well. Market, this in the Tavern, I believe. And then I think it was Forum. Those are my 4 favorites for these kind of buildings. Tinctuary is really good if you need Allen wine. And there are some special buildings that you will need kind of both of these, and there are a lot of people that benefit from both of these. So I almost value this more than I value the brewery, simply because it has wine in it. At a 2-star, it's equal cost. Again, Tinkerer is not bad. It has the best a pack of building materials. I don't think that's good enough, but it is good. The other two, again, you're making a lot to get to this point generally, unless you have access to Crystallized Dew. And then for this one, these are not cheap either. Training gear is kind of expensive. But again, if you need training gear for one of your more advanced buildings, not a bad choice, and you get at least this for your orders. Tools are great, don't get me wrong, it's just hard to produce them, that's all. Tool shop makes it a little bit easier to produce your tools. Again, tools are really good, but it just takes a lot of steps to generally produce them, unless you have access to Crystallized Dew. Trading post, if you're not building the trading post and you have access to the trading post, you're going to be losing a lot of games. You need the trading post. Build the trading post, please. Trapper's Camp, out of all the camps, if you're going to upgrade one, I value it the highest, but again, this will be based on your game and your needs in that game. The Weaver is the best for cloth. If you have access to Harpies, you probably are going to want this building just for the fact that it has fabric in it. It also gives you a pack of trade goods access, which there's only 3, and the smithy is the best, and the lumber mill has the other access to it, but it's a good building to have just so you can get this for orders. Woodcutter's Camp, you need 2 to 3 of these at all times, and a pro tip from me to you for newer players, if you're even this far in this video, this is a long video. During the storm, if you get a high resolve and you're unable to keep your people, instead of burning wood, it's easier just to take these guys off the Woodcutter's Camp during the storm, get your resolve down to 0, 1, 2, whatever you need to not be losing people or making them upset enough to leave, and put them on another task like producing fabric, planks or something, just for I think it's about 2 minutes for the storm. And let them just pump out a couple goods and then throw them back in after the storm's over. Eventually you should get to a point by year 3 to 4 you should be stabilized. So normally first year, second year, and then maybe the 3rd year should be shaky. If you're going in shaky in the 4th and 5th year, you're probably not doing good. Most of the time I can win by the 5th to 6th year, and I win solidly. Sometimes I can push out a 4-year if I really kind of push my luck in a sense, but generally I can be victorious in 5 to 6 years, and I'm comfortably winning. So Workshop is a very good building. This is a good starting building, so if you roll Workshop, whether it's your first out of your 3 blueprints you get, whether it's one of your first, second, or third choices. So if it's your first and you have no choice that looks like it's going to be good for you, or better than this, I would say pick this. if you get your 2 choices done, and this is your 3rd selection choice, and this pops up, and you have access to no planks, no fabric, and no brick production, and you don't have like the lumber mill, the weaver, or the brickyard, I want to say it was called, as any of the other choices there, this is probably the choice you're going to want to take just to increase your production on these and reduce the cost. You also are at that point less worried about pulling any of the other 3 buildings I named, although they are beneficial if you have the proper species to do those. So I would aim for those over the workshop, but this is like a one-in-all selection. You're just never going to be a master of all. So you can either master your production of the planks, fabrics, or bricks, or the ones that you need more of, or you can just be essentially mediocre, but better than having nothing. Anyways, there's some buildings I'm missing. Some of them are probably unlocks, like random things I just haven't found in the glades yet. But that's my list for the buildings. I hope that helps people that are trying to play. My biggest tip is to look at the building's specialization, see who likes the building, see what resolve needs that your species need. And I will go back to the main map real quick for you guys. So when I play, I like to pull out my tabs for my characters. So you can see, like, they want pickled goods, they want biscuits, they want cloth. Again, as you guys could hear me, I know, because I have it this way, I think I'm learning at this point to, I almost know what they are without seeing them, but I do like to visually have them open so I can see what needs I'm fulfilling and what needs I am not fulfilling. So I know what I'm working towards and what buildings are better when I get them in selection. So I will recommend, as I said, it's all going to be about the needs of your species. And just for an example, and the last thing I'm going to talk about in buildings in this video is I picked the granary because it popped up. It has pickled goods and fabric. In every species I have, foxes need pickled goods. Lizards need pickled goods. Beavers need pickled goods. I have pickled goods here. And the granary is one of the best buildings for pickled goods. So, worth taking. Because I'm going to need a lot of pickled goods. I also picked the butcher because I had skewers and jerky. And I had no better building. This was actually, this is going to probably be a rough start for me because both skewers and jerky. The foxes need skewers, so do the lizards, and then the lizard also likes jerky. But I kind of got 2 food buildings, and then I got the scribe. I didn't even get a good production building, so I'm actually making both the makeshift post and I'm making the crude workstation, whereas most of the time I can get away with not even making the crude workstation. But unfortunately in this game I'm going to have to. So anyways, that's the end of the video. Thanks for joining me, guys. If you enjoyed, like, subscribe to my channel. I'll be doing a lot of different videos. I do variety content. I may do a playthrough next time and just kind of go over all this kind of stuff and do a better tutorial on the actual gameplay map because I have not done that yet. And I think that's extremely important to know. Alright, Mystic Games out. Have a good one, guys.